Alrighty, what is up, everybody? Today we're here on another episode of Real Talk, Real Tips. This quite possibly is going to be my most favorite episode.
I'm pretty excited about
this is my wheelhouse, what I love to do. So today we're here with the Real Talk, Real Tips outdoor channel, hosted by the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. So next to me, I've got my co-host Taylor Tucker, and then we've got Michael Stranz, who's the owner of Lucky Lure Tackle Shop in Oklahoma City. And I know you just told me how to pronounce your last name and I already butchered it.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm
Michael
used to it.
Stranz. There we go.
It's all good.
And today we're going to be talking about bass fishing here in Oklahoma. So if you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves.
I'm Taylor Tucker, and I am a fisheries technician out at the Blue River Public Fishing and Hunting area.
I'm Michael Stranz, and as Jacob mentioned, I own Lucky Lure Tackle. We're the largest independent tackle store in the state of Oklahoma.
Awesome.
Nice.
All right. So, Michael, do you have any other interest other than fishing?
I like to hunt. I like the outdoors. I like sports, OU football. Now we're going to get half the audience that no longer likes me. So, but yeah, those are the big things.
Awesome. So I know along with owning the store, you also do a lot of tournament fishing. Can you kind of tell us your history of that and maybe how you got started?
Sure. So my dad, my uncle both got me fishing at an early age. The story is that I was fishing before I was walking, and there's pictures of me when I was young, actually in diapers, holding up fish.
Right.
So
I love that.
Awesome.
I fished my first tournament when I was 13 years old.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So without revealing my age, I've been fishing tournaments for a lot of years now. So for about 40 years to be exact.
Right.
And I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps before I purchased the store. So I've had the opportunity to fish bass fish, all kinds of fish all over the United States and actually the world. I've actually caught fish in Okinawa, Japan, mainland Japan. So
my dad was stationed there too.
Oh, really? No
Yeah.
kidding. That's awesome. Yep. So I've had the opportunity, and I've fished at the club level, at the lowest level, and I've fished up to the Toyota series, which is a lot of people consider it the AAA level or whatever. So I've had a lot of opportunity to fish in a lot of places, a lot of events.
That's an MLF tournament.
That's
right?
correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Awesome. My cousin just got done with the Harris chain in the same tournament.
No kidding.
In Florida. So
That's a different world down there.
yeah, he's a Georgia local, and
Oh, wow.
he's good. He was actually here the last year or the year before at the Grand Lake Bassmaster.
Oh, no
that's
kidding.
cool.
Okay.
So
wow.
yeah, Justin Barnes, shout out.
Oh, yeah. I know. Actually know
Shout
who
out.
You
that
know
is.
him. Oh,
Yeah.
what a
Yeah.
small
yeah.
world.
Yeah. That's awesome.
We're related somehow.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about what your favorite part of bass fishing is? What was it that got you hooked so early?
The bass fishing part, I think, was just the competitiveness.
Yeah.
I'm a very competitive person, and even at a young age, there were derbies, and even from the bank fishing, things like that.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to do, and it was just when I was young, there was a mystique about it because the guys, the guys that bass fish, they were the guys that really knew how to do it or whatever. So that always interested me. So I think it's just the competitive nature in me.
That's really neat.
It's one of those things that I actually commented on one of our last videos. A guy was like, "Man, fishing is tough." And I was like, "You're dead on about that. Like, that's why it's called fishing, not catching. And if it was easy, everybody would do it."
Half the fun's just going out there, though.
Right.
We hear that a lot in our store. People come
Yeah.
in and, they're just like, well, I don't catch fish every time I go out. Well, neither do we.
Right.
It doesn't quite work that way. So
That's awesome. So I know, and from the tournament side, you do a lot of boat angling. Do you do any bank fishing along with that?
absolutely. I now have grandkids who I'm trying to get into it. I did it with my kids as well. And even we have some neighborhood ponds, which is a big thing in Oklahoma. A lot of the neighborhoods have ponds
Right.
and stuff. And I'll tell you, the fishing in those can be a lot better sometimes than even our lakes, So, I go down there in the evenings and fish from the bank and things like that as well.
Awesome.
That's always a fun way to fish.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to put a kid on a fish in a pond. It really is.
Couldn't agree more. I think sometimes we get so excited that we want the kids to enjoy our passion that we try to take them straight up to, what we do and how we do it. And it's getting them catching fish, bluegill, crappie, whatever the case may be.
Right.
I agree.
That's awesome.
Now, do you use any electronics while you're fishing?
I do. I use just about everything that's out there in one way, shape, or another, which I know is very controversial in today's world, with tournament fishing. But I do, when I'm tournament fishing, I use the forward-facing sonar Garmin version, and I use Humminbird 360. I have side scan. I try to use all that to my advantage when I'm tournament fishing. It's one of those things where, regardless of whether I think we should or shouldn't in a tournament, I have to. That's the only way I can be competitive.
Yeah.
Right.
Everyone's using it.
The vast majority.
Okay.
So there are definitely advantages to all of the electronics that we have today.
Oh, yeah.
Do you, as a tournament angler, are there any disadvantages that you think?
Yes. Especially when you first start, like with the forward-facing sonar, you see the fish and you think, well, now I'm going to catch the fish.
Oh, yeah.
And
Right.
we have a bad habit of spending too much time on fish that just aren't going to bite. It's almost like for a lot of the audience who's probably bed fished before and see bass up on the beds, you can spend hours and hours on that fish and it's not gonna not gonna bite. It can be the same thing. And the biggest challenge I have is just history. I'll use forward facing sonar and I'll see the fish and know what I probably should be doing. And then history tells me, well, I used to catch them on a bank. I used to catch them off a log. I used to catch them over here. And it's an internal battle. I fight a lot.
Do you have a general rule of thumb when using those electronics for how much time you will spend on a fish?
It's for me, it's really gotten to the point of trying to learn that fish's mannerisms, which really, gets a little more technical, but really if that fish doesn't respond within the first 2 or 3 casts, it's time for me to move on to another one.
Really? So I know this is kind of a difficult question, but say you're on a lake, you don't have the electronics. What are some key things that you're going to look for to get some strikes, get some action?
A local tackle store so they can tell me what's going on. Now, really, if I'm going to a lake for the first time, time of year is going to be a big part of it. If it's this time of year and we're looking at the spawn, that's going to tell me where those fish are likely going to be positioned versus the heat of the summer or the dead of the winter. Water clarity, how clear is the water? How deep is the water? Is it a deep lake or a shallow lake? And then in cover and vegetation, things of that, structure, cover, things like that.
Right. I know you said that kind of as a joke, but you're spot on. I mean, your local
The locals
tackle
know.
shops, your local bait shops, those are the places that if you're starting out as a beginner, that's where you should be going.
We get a ton of phone calls, people coming in, and quite frankly, that's one of my biggest passions because you take a tournament angler or someone's been fishing for a long time, the last thing they want is advice from me or someone on my team. They know what they want. They want to come in and get it. They want to make sure that we have it. But I love the mom or the dad that brings in a son or a daughter and listen, we're just getting started. I love that. It's like an empty canvas that we try to start from step one. And instead of trying to just throw a bunch of things at them, keep it basic. Let's start with this. And when they come back or they call us with pictures or whatever, that's what really does it
You
for
get
me.
excited for them, don't you?
Absolutely. More than just about anything. That's really what does it for me.
That's what makes it so great, that passion for it.
100%.
And wanting other people to enjoy it.
Yeah, one of my biggest things is trying to get our youth, especially here in Oklahoma fishing.
Right.
Here's the thing. It's like anything else. Not everybody's going to want to do it after they've had the opportunity to be exposed to it. But I think it's our responsibility as adults to expose each child to it and let them decide for themselves if that's something that they're going to want to do or not.
Absolutely.
And I think part of that is that first initial exposure, try to make it a good one. Whether you're just going out, throwing out a rig for catfish, that can be the most relaxing and fun type of fishing. It doesn't have to be, oh, we're going out to catch lunker bass. You can go out, just sit, bobber or throw your bobber and your weight out there with a worm. And
I couldn't agree more.
Kind of like the fishing clinics that we have going right now, it's just little sunfish that we're putting those kids on, but they just get tickled. They just want to catch a fish.
I couldn't agree more. I think, in today's world of electronics and stuff, we hear about it all the time, keeping the kids away from the phones and the iPads and stuff like that. Even if you're taking their favorite food out there with you, and whatever, but to your point, getting a bobber and a worm and letting them catch bluegill or whatever's biting, the action's what's going to keep them there. Right. The fact that they don't care if they're catching a largemouth bass or a carp or a bluegill. It's just they want to catch a fish, and that's I think as adults we need to keep that in mind when we're taking them out there.
For sure.
So, what is your go-to setup for when you're fishing?
It really depends. That varies greatly depending on the time of year. So, for example, this time of year, springtime, the fish are normally shallow. They're normally in that spawn mode. They're either fished a tournament 2 weeks ago, or I guess it was last weekend. Time's running fast. But we have fish that are in Oklahoma right now that are spawning. They're in pre-spawn and they're post-spawn. So a Texas rig creature bait is always good because it'll catch fish off the bed. It'll catch fish that are moving off the bed. It'll catch fish that are going to the bed. But it just... I'm not trying to avoid the question. It just really varies on the time of the year and what's going on.
I can tell you one of the ponds that I fish, it's a little shallower pond out along the edges, and I've already got males on the beds protecting the eggs.
We noticed that yesterday.
And they are not having it. No matter what I threw at them, I had my polarized sunglasses on watching them. I'd flip out to them, and they're just like, yeah, I'm not messing with that.
I'm going to protect these eggs instead.
And it's like,
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's amazing how quickly, I don't think people appreciate how quickly, a female, her one and only purpose is to come up and get rid of those eggs and get back off the water. So, even when you're pre-fishing for like tournaments, for example, and you see one on the beds, there's no guarantee she's going to be there tomorrow. And oftentimes she's not.
So this time of year, do you have any suggestions for those females that have just come off the bed?
Yeah, that's when you start, depending on the lake, of course, but just in general, that's where people start throwing like wacky rigs, which is
that's
nothing.
That's my go-to.
Yeah, like which is nothing more than a Cinco, or whatever your brand is. It could be the Yum Dinger or whatever the case may be, but throwing those and shaky heads, some top water. This is a good time of year to really start throwing top water, and you catch a fish on top water, and then you're done for life. You get a kid to do that, it's all over with.
What's your favorite top water?
For catching numbers of fish, it's probably a pop R.
Yeah.
If it's catching larger fish, it's going to be either a frog, which gives me chills every time I'm even
Frog's
saying
so
that.
Fun.
Oh my gosh, when they hit a frog, it's amazing. Or like a walking bait, like a Zara spook or something like that.
Okay.
That's awesome. So we're gonna try to get into some stories here. Okay. First one, like your biggest fish.
My biggest fish, I actually caught it in North Carolina.
Okay.
And I was fishing a tournament. My wife and I had only been married for maybe a year, and it was a team tournament, and it was raining, and it was springtime, and it was cold, and she was not very happy with me at the time. And I'll never forget it, because when I hooked the fish, she was sitting in the back of the boat in a rain suit, just hunkered down, just waiting for this day to get over with. And I felt like I fought the fish forever. I mean, you guys can appreciate that. You catch a good fish, and all of a sudden it takes forever. But got it to the side of the boat. I actually caught it on a crankbait. And when she went to net it, the top of the treble hook on the front hook actually got caught in the net. So she's holding the net here. The fish is down here.
Oh, no.
And her story is she saw a divorce immediately. But she handled it like a champ. Like, I don't care how long you've been fishing. I've had co-anglers not even handle it as well. She just dipped the net straight back down over the fish and brought it back up. And
you knew she was a keeper.
Oh, yeah. I told her, I said, that gets you at least 20 years. So.
That's awesome.
So, sorry. When you are fishing from the bank, kind of like for the people that are wanting to get their kids and stuff out there, are there any areas or specific signs that you are looking for that makes you think that it's going to be a good spot for bass?
Yeah, anytime that you can find any kind of structure, and what I mean by structure, it could be outcropping of rocks, it could be a tree, it could be a small patch of grass, it could be anything that's outside the normal. If you're walking down a bank, you're usually, even in small ponds, you're going to find 2 or 3 places that are going to be just different than the rest of the ponds, and that's exactly where I'd start.
For sure. All right, let's go. Which we didn't get the weight of that fish.
Oh yeah.
Well, I was hoping we wouldn't, but it was 9.5 pounds. That's the biggest largemouth I've caught. It's a 9.8.
That's awesome. Hey, anything like over a 3 for me is like my day's made.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've learned the more tournaments I fish that it's more about that tournament and that day than it is even the size. I mean,
For sure.
I've caught some 14-inch fish that I felt like were, the greatest thing that's ever happened. And I've also caught 6-pounders, and I thought, man, this isn't going to do me any good. So,
Right. I mean, you go to a lake like OHIV or somewhere like that. I mean, Texas has a great program.
They do.
We're working on that ourselves. The Grand Lake system here is top tier for bass fishing.
Absolutely, it is 100%. And and you both would probably know this far better than me, but as our lakes age, just like lakes in all across the United States, as they start to age, they atrophy and start to they get sediment and stuff.
Yeah.
It's great that we have the smallmouth bass in our fisheries because
100%.
they're starting to thrive. They don't need the structure and the cover that the largemouth do.
Right.
And, lakes like Texoma, they're starting to take over in a good way, starting to take the lakes over because it's very conducive to the way they live.
For sure.
That's a really popular fish out at Blue River where I work too.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
it is. We
I
get
mean-
people all the time that show us pictures when they go up to Blue River thinking they're going to go trout fishing or whatever,
yeah.
and then they catch smallmouth and they're back in our store on Monday wanting to know, hey, what else do I need for these
Right.
smallmouth?
So
They're fun. Yeah,
They are
right.
fun.
I got to go on a canoe trip a couple weeks ago, and I ended up catching my personal best smallmouth at 4.5 pounds.
Oh wow,
That's a
that's a
good
good one.
smallmouth.
Yeah, it is.
20 1/4 inches.
Wow.
Off of a 6-inch swim bait. So
That's
this
awesome.
was
That
right
still blows
at
my mind. What a big bait they
Right.
hit.
That's right. That's right. It'll blow you away for sure.
that morning. He was like, the guy I was with, he was like, yeah, these are what we're using. Like this is what I catch them on consistently, trophy smallmouth. And I was like, dude, you're crazy. Like there's no way.
We're gonna have to talk after this. You're gonna have to tell me
Right.
where we're at.
Right. I'll just go ahead and tell the whole crew. The Lower Illinois River around Tahlequah.
Oh yeah.
There's good smallmouth fishery. Like even if you look at Latonka, the Broken Bow area,
10 killer.
10 killer. I mean, I feel like the smallmouth is such an underrated fish for our state.
I feel like it's getting more popular though.
It
I
is.
hear so many more people talking about it now.
It is, and I'll
sure.
tell you, we have, we talk about the larger tournaments. We have professionals come in. When we Eufaula's holding more tournaments than they've ever held. Grand always has. When they come in, they're surprised by the different species we have that have size. The largemouth, the smallmouth, and the spotted bass, because some of our lakes have some really large spotted bass as well.
So on that Illinois trip, I caught 3 fish of all species, or like one of each.
That's
I
awesome.
caught a largie, a smallie, and a striped, or not a striped, sorry,
Spotted.
a spotted,
Right.
all in the same trip.
It's amazing how many lakes we can do that in Oklahoma. That's
Yep.
one area that we are fortunate compared to some of the other
We
states
have
because
so much diversity.
yeah, we do, and again the size. I've caught all 3 species on at one time on Texoma, Eufaula, Fort Gibson, and 10 killer.
Yeah.
And I know there's others out there you can do it on as well, but that's just what comes to mind.
Do you have a favorite lake to fish?
Texoma.
That's my home.
Yeah,
I love it.
We had a lake house down there for a few years before we bought the store, and that's kind of my home away from home.
It's a great
awesome.
lake.
I love it.
I grew up on it.
Yeah, it's awesome, and the striped bass there, the population is just insane. I've always said the worst thing that could ever happen to that lake is if we started having fewer striper guides because it's so prolific with
Right.
striper. You couldn't catch all them if you tried.
That's funny. I was actually about to, on the diversity, and, you look at our 3 black bass, but then you go into your striper, your hybrid striper, and your white bass.
Yep.
And it's like, well, there's another 3 that you can catch on just about the same lures.
Absolutely.
Some of the same lures that you can catch. I can't talk today. You can
It's
catch
okay.
your
It
3 black
happens.
bass on. And so, like, there's 6 fish right there that you can catch off of one lure.
And you bring those up, and we were talking about getting younger kids fishing the white bass. Some people call them
My
sand
son
bass.
loves them.
Yeah, listen, especially in the spring when they're running, you can catch them cast after cast after cast. And what a better way to get the kids fishing than to do something like that.
Most definitely. Well, I know, like, here in Oklahoma City, you've probably heard a lot of this at the store, but Overholser and Hefner for the white bass are just hot.
Absolutely.
Right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's this time of year they start running and they start schooling and they're out there and they only have one purpose in life, and that's feeding on the shad in the lake. So you get around them and you can get a kid with, anything, a beetle spin, a blade bait, whatever the case may be, and they could just catch fish after fish.
Right. Well, even better, there's no limit on the white bass.
That's right. And there's a reason for that. And, I hope people understand that there's a reason
Right.
for that. Catching a bunch of those and using, frying some up or cooking them your favorite way. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a reason
Right.
there's not a
The
limit.
harvests are in place for a reason.
That's
it
right.
helps the population taking
That's right.
some.
That's right.
And you can get a
100%.
good dinner out of it.
That absolutely.
So, Michael, are there, completely change of topic, but are there any weather conditions that you look for that you're just like, I'm going out to fish this day. I'm dropping everything. I'm going to fish. This is the weather. I'm going out.
The guys from the store could probably tell you this even better than I could, because they know anytime we have a front coming in, like if, for example, if we have a storm coming in tomorrow, this afternoon, today would be a great day to be out there. Barometric pressure plays a big part, especially bass fishing, but for all fish. They're almost the exact opposite of whitetail deer.
Right.
Whitetail deer move best when you have high barometric pressure, but when you have a drop in the barometric pressure going down, or you have very stable barometric pressure, those are the 2 best times to fish. And like I said, not just for bass, for any fish. So anytime
sure.
a front's coming in is when you see that barometric pressure starting to drop. That's a great time to be out fishing.
Definitely.
So, if you had to just give a few suggestions, someone's just starting out, what would be the main tips you have for them? And on a side note, someone that's been fishing for a little while, what would be your main tips for them?
Okay, for someone that's just starting out, I would say keep it basic. Even at the store, we try, like I said before, not to inundate them with a bunch of different stuff. Keep
Yeah.
it real basic. Let's just get something that you can learn well. Even if it's a bobber and a hook and worms,
Right.
minnows, or if it's something as simple as a wacky rig like we talked about before. But whatever it is, don't think you have to go headlong into it, regardless of what you're fishing for, whether it's bass, bluegill, or whatever, and get with somebody that does have experience. We joked earlier about the store. That's one of the things we love to do, but get somebody that's experienced with fishing to help get you started, because the worst thing you can do is go out and be frustrated and have a bad first experience, because then
Right.
it turns you off. But just really the big thing is, first, right out of the gates, just keep it as basic as you can, start catching some fish, and then learn your style. Jacob, you were talking about like what you like to do the best. And,
Right.
I'm sure you have your favorite way to fish. We all do. And it's a personality driven thing. So, but it takes a while to figure that out. And then with someone with experience, and I have to tell myself this all the time, is keep an open mind and be willing to learn. I learned so much from our young guys that work in the store. These young, they have high school tournament angling now and college angling where kids are getting scholarships and things of that nature. They have such young, open minds that I think I take as much in from them as they do from me now.
Most definitely. Kind of touching on that, you guys at your store, and there's probably more in Oklahoma City, but y'all bring in professional anglers sometimes to come and do classes at the store.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's something that was really popular back in the late 80s, early 90s
Yeah.
that has kind of faded. And I think one of the main reasons of that is because of the advent of social media and things of that nature that, people can pick it up on YouTube or whatever the case may
Right.
be real easily. But, I think that personal, interaction, bringing them in. And again, it goes back to what I said before. It's so amazing to see these young kids in the crowd when we bring them in and just seeing their looks in their eyes, because at first, they look at these anglers like heroes.
Oh yeah.
You know, and then the next thing you know, they're taking pictures with them and getting on, and you can just see them soaking in the knowledge. So we get more out of it than our customers do.
Kind of creates
Most
a culture, like the pass it down culture.
Absolutely, 100%.
I love that.
Well, even more than that, like you make those personal connections, and then it's like, hey, well, let's go out and fish sometime. And then what you learn from that guy you're fishing with that day is going to hold with you for the rest of your fishing career.
Absolutely, 100%. I've been very blessed to have different anglers that are, professional fishermen that I've had the opportunity to spend time with, and I take that and I pass that on to other people.
For sure.
Because that's what I really enjoy doing.
So as I mentioned earlier, I have like one bait. Mine's the wacky rig. Like if I'm not having any luck on anything else that day, I'm breaking out my wacky rig. What's your like go-to? Having a bad day, not able to get many bites. You've got one thing to throw.
A jerk bait.
Really?
Yep. Actually, and I'll be very specific. I've got a couple of friends that are going to hate me for this, but it's a Mega Bass 110 Junior +1, which is just a jerk bait, a smaller jerk bait that has a little bigger bill that goes deeper, and then the color really varies depending on the watercolor, but something natural colored. That's my confidence bait. When like nothing's biting and I'm convinced there's not a fish in the lake,
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to get out. I'm going to start throwing and praying.
Right.
So talking about the watercolor and the colors, could you kind of go into that, like what colors you use depending on water?
Sure. So in Oklahoma, as I'm sure the audience knows, we have a lot of dirty water. It's a red dirt world around here. A lot of
It
times.
is very turbulent.
And you're right, and so in those conditions, it's usually very dark colors. Your black and blues are big players because that color carries a density in it that holds its I don't know what the technical term is, but basically you can see it or they can feel it
Yeah.
more. And the deeper it is, the clearer the water it gets, the more natural or more translucent. When I say translucent, just clear. Any kind of clear baits, whether it be top water, doesn't really matter. But so for example, if I'm on 10 killer, and that's one of the clearest lakes I can think of.
Yeah.
It's either going to be a green pumpkin or something naturally colored that's what the bait fish are going to look like, shad colored maybe. You go to a lake like Grand where you can have some fairly clear areas, but it can get a little bit more stained.
Right.
You might add, some different color to it. But basically your darkest colors, the dirtier it is, and then the cleaner it is, the more natural colored and the more translucent.
For sure. So we were just kind of talking about this with the aquarium. When you look at a lake such as Overholser, you're going to have that more whitish, silvery colors compared to if you look at something like, say, 10 Killer. You've got a lot of vegetation, a lot of structure. You're going to have your more greens, your kind of colored up fish. And those fish, their colors can actually change based on their surroundings.
Absolutely.
So like we're talking about, a dull environment can kind of wash them out a little bit. And so that is something to think about when you're picking what color lure you want to throw, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah, Mother Nature does a really good job of helping protect her resource. And those fish learn how to blend in really well.
Well, the ones that don't survive very long.
That's right. Survival of the fittest.
Right. Can you kind of touch on water temperature a little bit?
Sure. So, water temperature is obviously a big player, and like, for example, most of our lakes now are somewhere in the mid 60s.
Right.
Most largemouth bass are going to, the key temperatures have always been 60 to 65. Not that, it's funny because we say that as a general rule of thumb, that's pretty close, but we'll have customers come in June and say, I just caught a bass off the bed. They're like human beings. Not all of them are the same. But so your 60 to 65 is your time period of spawn. I would say upper 40s to upper 50s is your pre-spawn period. That's where the bass are coming out of the deep water. They're moving shallow. They're feeding up for the spawn. Then, like I said, you get that 60 to 65 as a spawn. And then after that, you start getting into the post spawn where they start feeding up again. And usually it's when they're the most active until you get into the summertime. When that water temperature gets into the mid 80s, a little more, that's when they start going deep. You know, you can catch them early in the morning or late in the evening, shallow, but for the most part, that's where they start getting deeper. And then you go through the exact opposite process as you get into fall. When you get it into the low 70s, into the upper 50s, that's when they're doing their fall bite, feeding up for the winter. And then as you get into the upper 40s and down, that's wintertime fishing again.
That's awesome.
Well, talking about like the heat, I know catching them when it's really hot, you can add a lot of stress on them, and you start getting into catch and release mortality. Do you have any tricks or tips on handling whenever you've caught them to help with that?
Yeah, the biggest thing is, and even if you're not a tournament fisherman, even if it's just catch and release, the biggest thing is if you're wanting to take a picture, if you're wanting to do anything, to just do it as quick as you possibly can. You know, I understand they can live out of water a little longer than we can live in the water. But to your point, that stress that goes way higher when the water temperature is a lot warmer. So it's get the fish in. If you want a picture, get a quick picture, get it back in the water and let it go. But just taking as little time as possible with the fish out of the water. Right. And then if you're tournament fishing, it's more about additives in the live well, having a live well that works well. You know, that's
good
constantly
aeration.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, most tournament anglers I know take that very seriously. They take that resource seriously. I know that sometimes there's a stigma out there, but I don't know any in the group that I know that don't care about the resource. They understand that that's a resource that we have to maintain. So I think most people take it pretty seriously.
Definitely. So you gave us your best or like your favorite lake. Do you have like a top 3, top 5? Like you're going out for a day, whether you're in, say, the western part of the state, eastern part, just kind of a spread for kind of whoever in the state.
Sure.
Like maybe closest to them.
You know, I told you down south that it would be Texoma, of course. And then out east, I'm actually a big fan of the Arkansas River. I actually love fishing the Arkansas River. I would guess that 10 Killer would probably be second on that list in that area. Up north, I like Sooner Lake. Okay. You know, it's a different kind of fish, and all these lakes I'm referring to are different. Yeah. If you go out west, Latonka, you mentioned it before. That's for sure. I really enjoy that lake out there. And then you can't, you know, my big thing is I would share that you don't want to pass up some of the smaller city lakes. You know, and I could give you 100 examples, but they're all, you know, very similar. Those city lakes are some of our best lakes in the state of Oklahoma. Right. You can go out there and have a time. I mean, you can, regardless of what you're interested in.
A lot of them are in the stocking rotation for the Florida largemouth bass and everything that the state does. Yeah,
absolutely. And you can tell the ones that have been in it the longest because some of the fish you catch in there are some of the biggest you're going to catch in the state. Yeah.
Well, not only have we started stocking the F1 hybrids, we've also, we're continually building fish structure to dump into all of our statewide lakes. And I think that's just attributed to our fisheries division. I think that's huge. And as we mentioned before, as these lakes age and start to atrophy and silt in, I think it's even more important than it's ever been before for that to happen. Right. And I can assure you that there's probably not a lake out there that I've been on that I haven't taken advantage of the structure you guys have put in there because it helps. It helps a great deal. For sure. In one of our previous episodes, we pulled up our website, which actually has a GPS map of all of the structure that we put in across the state. And you can actually take that map and plug it in to your GPS unit on your boat.
You're giving up our secrets now.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, that's awesome because you're absolutely right because they 100% work. I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's legitimate.
Yeah, they just did they had a whole nother event recently building more of those Shelbyville cubes.
Yeah, I think they built over 200, if I'm not mistaken.
I've seen the pictures. It was a lot.
Yeah, big group effort.
That's awesome. That helps it helps our lakes a great deal. And it helps in so many ways. I mean, when, we're in the middle of the spawn now. So when the fry are out there, I mean, our lakes in Oklahoma have very little grass. We have very few of our lakes that have a great deal of grass. They have got to have somewhere to avoid being ambushed, because once they're hatched and they're there, they're food. That's their deal. So having places like the structure you guys are building helps a great deal.
For sure. I mean, another awesome resource we have is our catfish. And you know that to some of the size of catfish we have here in the state, that those fry don't stand a chance.
No.
Catfish are always hungry.
Right.
The catfish, they are certainly not up the food chain when they're small.
No.
For sure.
Between the catfish and the white bass and the hybrids and the striped bass. And I think we have more and larger drum in Oklahoma than in any state in the union. I'm telling you, it's insane.
It's funny. So one thing, as a tournament angler, do you have any opinions on harvesting smaller bass when you're not like out fishing for competition?
I absolutely do. I think that it's gotten a bad stigma, and quite frankly, and this is just my opinion, I'm certainly not a biologist, I think it hurts our lakes that we don't harvest more.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think that harvesting, especially like, for example, our spotted bass, as I'm sure you know, that they are as prolific as a crappie is.
Right.
And if we don't take some of those and take them home to harvest them, I think it becomes a deal where some, especially our smaller lakes, get stunted.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that we should take more. And it's, as bass tournament anglers, it's kind of on us, because we were brought up in the age where it was catch and release. And in a lot of cases, don't misunderstand me, it still should be. Those better fish you catch in a tournament, they do need to be let go. But if you're catching legal size fish, again, I strongly believe that those limits are out there for a reason.
They are.
And as a lot of folks know, that the limit on largemouth, well, actually all three, but largemouth and spotted bass especially, has changed recently. Well, that changed for a reason.
To encourage the harvest of smaller bass.
Absolutely. And I would encourage everybody to do that. Those smaller fish, there's more than enough small fish to grow larger. Some of those smaller ones do need to go.
For sure.
Which, that's why we're talking about our regulations, which right now in the handbook, if you read it, it's 6 combined for the largemouth and the smallmouth, with only 1 over 16 inches. And the spotted, like you were saying, it has no limit on it right now, which always check your public waters. Some have their own regulations.
Right.
But they have indeterminate growth. So that is completely determined on how much forage they're going to get in their lifetime. And if there's so much competition around them, that's when you start running into being stunted. So if you want to catch those big bass in your local waters, you need to harvest. Plus, they taste great. It's it's a win-win.
For sure.
No, I completely agree.
I'm running into that problem on one of the ponds I fish, is that I can go out there any given day, no matter the weather or whatever, and catch a bass. But the problem is they're all at about 12 inches, nothing over a pound, pound and a half. It's like, man, this could be a really good pond if I could convince them to let me start kind of managing it better. Taking better care of it.
It's hard to change that mindset, especially when you said, like, a while back it was all catch and release. I know like when my dad was growing up, he talked about like a lot of the fisheries and wildlife. They just weren't as populated as they are now. So it was a lot different culture than it is now. Management practices have changed.
I think especially with the bass.
Oh yeah, and it's to your point, it swung very hard in the, you still see pictures from in the 50s and 60s when tournament fishing really got going, and guys coming in with stringers of 30 to 15 to 30 fish, and they're all on stringers, and they would literally stack them in john boats with ice in them, and afterwards they just have a big cleaning party, and a gentleman by the name of Ray Scott realized he's the one that really got professional bass fishing going, and realized that this was a renewable resource that we had to manage. And like you were just saying, Jacob, we have swung the other direction too hard now, to where it feels almost sacrilegious to take a bass, and I think we need to get away from that.
I think there's like a fine line there. Those larger bass, like those are the ones that 3 pounds plus typically are the ones that I'm okay. Like I'm going to get you back in the water quick, make sure I get you some oxygen going again, because those are the fish that have the good genetics, like they're going to spawn and bring back more big fish.
Completely agree.
Whereas like, okay, you reel in a smaller fish, sub 12 inches, that you're like, you're thin, we need to cull you, but in a good way. Like,
Right.
Let's harvest you, but for a purpose.
That's right. That's right. I think our lakes would be, I know our lakes would be a lot better off if we could encourage that more. And again, like you said, that's the reason we have the regulations that are in place today. The part now is, and it's all of our responsibility, is the education piece, making sure they understand why.
100%. Michael, you're just such a wealth of knowledge. Like,
I know.
I highly recommend anybody watching this to stop by the store, any of our other local tackle shops. Like all of these guys, I know you've probably got relationships with
Absolutely, all of them, and all of them have people in there that work that want to help. Listen, we're very fortunate. We don't have as many tackle stores, the smaller ones in Oklahoma that we used to, but the ones we have, every single one of them, and I could just list them. They do a great job, and they're there to help.
And y'all do it because you're passionate about it.
Absolutely. Like I said, my biggest passion is just getting more people doing it, because I know the impact it made on my life. And again, I understand that not everybody's going to have a passion of doing it like I do, but there will be some, and I want those to be exposed to it so they have that opportunity.
100%. And I don't think it could be any better. Like, I love the small town, like, go in, like, I know people's names when I walk in that store, and most of the other stores in the state that I go into, like, the people know me. Like, when you go in there consistently and it's like, hey, how you been doing? How's the fishing? What are you catching them on? And it's just like this wealth of knowledge that you can collect by one trip. And I'll be honest, most of the time I come in, I don't plan to buy anything. Like, I just go in to talk, and then I end up buying stuff. So it's like, well,
it's got that community feel to it.
Right.
I always tell everybody it's kind of like the barbershop atmosphere. You come in for a haircut and you're just listening to the older guys tell stories. But the cool part is we have them. And I say the older guys, you know what? We have more ladies fishing today than we've ever had, which motivates me big time. I mean, when we have several mothers that come in that bring their daughters in, and having 3 granddaughters of my own, that just makes my day. They get out there. Oh my goodness. I mean, that probably excites me more than even with some of the young guys, because you expect that, but you see those girls come in and they have pictures of their fish and they're just so proud of it. I mean, that'll make your day.
Girls like fishing just as much as boys.
Absolutely. And a lot of times, absolutely. Shout out to all the moms that do that. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of times the girls will outfish the boys. So just look out, boys.
Yeah, that's right.
I like where this conversation's headed.
Well, we just had our state shotgun shoots, and it's one of those things that, like, the girl scores have a bigger impact on the guy scores, and it, like, honestly works that way in life. Like, if the girls are out fishing, I mean, obviously most of the guys can be like, oh yeah, I'll go tag along and go fishing,
Kind of why some guys take home ec.
Right.
Yeah, right. It's funny because we see that even in the high school competitions now. Like we touched on before, they have high school fishing teams now, which I think is an amazing deal. So and there's a couple of young ladies, they're in a school in eastern Oklahoma. I can't remember which one, but their dad, I've fished against their dad. But they get out there, and I'm going to tell you, those boys get fired up because they're trying to beat them. And those girls, they win more than they lose. I'm telling you, they do very well.
That's what my son's school has, a competitive fishing team. There's a little girl that goes there, and she just got a full ride scholarship to college off of fishing, which is amazing to me.
That's, I don't know if it would have been a good thing or a bad thing if they would have had that when I was in school. I mean, I guess that would have been a good thing because I would have had to kept my grades up. But yeah, it's amazing that I would encourage any parent, grandparent, guardian, whatever the case may be, if you have a child that's interested, to look into that, because that's something that really, they help, because like you mentioned before, it becomes a culture, it becomes a community, and that community is a pretty tight community.
It opens a lot of opportunities for them too.
Oh my goodness. I mean, like some of the young guys that worked for me, had a young girl work for me until she went to become a policeman in Norman, which was awesome. But
cool.
but a lot of them that work for me, they come in because they fished high school tournaments or whatever the case may be. They knew the store, they wanted to be a part of
Right.
it, and that's how they got in.
That's awesome. Right here before we finish up, do you have any just like interesting, crazy, like awesome stories of whether it's just personal or from your tournament angling time? Just something to help people maybe get to know you a little better.
Man, I wish I could have been preloaded with that one a little bit. That might take a minute to think through.
Yeah.
Do you have one that I can use as an example?
One time, my dad and I, we were southwest Oklahoma around the Altus area on Tom Steed Lake. And so Tom Steed, the way it was back when we were fishing, it only had one boat ramp at the time. And it was completely opposite of the river that kind of fed the lake. And so we're out there midday, zooming across the lake, get up in the river, start fishing, and we start catching the white bass really well. It was right about that time that they're starting to move up the river. And unfortunately, as dusk kind of came, a storm had rolled in. And because southwest Oklahoma, I mean, the weather can change just like that. And so we start coming out, and at this time, man, we had like this real small, it was like a 16-foot boat, just enough to get the job done on a big lake like that. And so we come out and 4-foot swells rolling over the lake.
Oh, geez.
And we're like, well, we kind of give each other that look of like, are we going to do this or like, what's going on here? So we're like, we're going to send it. So in the moment, not our smartest idea. We'll just say that. It seemed that every time we'd hit the top of a wave and throttle down to try to get to the next one, the boat just wasn't long enough. And so nose of the boat would go down and that next wave would just ride on top of us. And so I'm a good swimmer. Let me tell you, I was a lifeguard for a couple years. I can swim, but I was kind of scared. I'm not going to lie. When the boat started filling up with water, I was kind of nervous.
It's always, everything's fine until it's not.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As far as the story goes, like I said, I'm kind of drawing a blank, but you were saying kind of get to know me a little bit better. I grew up bank fishing. I grew up fishing out of a john boat. I've probably caught more fish out of a john boat or the bank than I ever will out of my bass boat.
Right.
I have fished my entire life. I have fished creeks with Zebco 202s. I mean, I'll tell you, one year I got a Zebco 33 for Christmas when I was young and thought I was big time. Yeah, I thought, Roland Martin's got nothing on me now because I am big time. So there is nothing that you couldn't ask that I probably haven't experienced when it comes to fishing, from catching bluegill all up to, like I said, having the opportunity to have fished all around the world, saltwater fish, freshwater fish. So I've probably experienced most of it and would have no problem doing any of it again.
Right. To kind of wrap that story up, always have your life jackets. Yes. Thankfully, we did. We're prepared, following the rules. Your life jacket, your horn or your whistle. That's important. Luckily, we ended up skirting the edge of the lake till we found some folks nice enough to drive my dad back to get the truck and trailer, and we just happened to drop the trailer right inside of the lake and load the boat up and headed home. It was a late night, real cold, but
worked out well for the situation.
Right.
You bring up a good point that I would like to point out is there's more people on the water today than ever before.
For sure.
We always talk about growing the sport, and I'm a fan of that. I think we have to be careful with how we grow it. But there's so many people on the water today, safety. I mean, I just can't emphasize how important safety is. This weekend alone, we lost 3 anglers in a tournament. Yeah, and there was another bad accident, and a lot of that stuff can be avoided by just, and again, it's not just not just tournament fishermen or fishermen. It's pleasure boaters, things of that nature. Safety, we really have to understand that there's more of us out there now and that we don't have brakes in those things.
Yeah, especially when you're running rivers.
That's right.
Be careful. You do not know what's going to be sitting around the next curve, the next turn. Our prayers are with those families that are going through that. One of those gentlemen was my Georgia hometown local. So the whole situation is kind of just terrible.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was, nothing intentional on anyone's part,
Right.
but unfortunately, the end result was still the same.
Right.
Just can't emphasize how important safety is.
For sure.
Even when you have all that years of experience, like I feel like sometimes we've had accidents on Lake Texoma where it's just people being lax in those safety procedures because they're like, I've done it 100 times.
Right.
I think that's sometimes the biggest problem is we do, well, I've done this for all these years. I'm good. Well, that's about the time it normally happens.
It is.
That's
The
I think
overconfidence.
that's got to be the most, I hate to say this, ignorant excuse for really anything.
Agreed.
Like I've done this so long, and it's like it doesn't matter how long you've done it. Things are constantly changing. We live in a new world. The world we start fresh every day.
And it just takes
Something
one time.
new, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
But to kind of lighten the mood, I do want to touch on. I know. Right now we live in an awesome time where there's a bridge between bank fishing and boat fishing, and that is kayaks.
I
Absolutely.
love kayaks.
I love
Absolutely.
my kayak. I've caught more fish out of my kayak than I have out of my boat.
That's become,
Hands down.
it's become so popular.
It's affordable. It's mobile. Like, you have advantages in a kayak that you don't have on the bank and you don't have on the boat.
Absolutely.
Because you can get to places that no one else can get to. And you're skinny. I call it get skinny. When I'm trying to get up in a spot that, no one else can fish. And a kayak, like you said,
You get
affordable.
anywhere.
And you can get anywhere with it.
And the fishing
fun.
industry is acknowledging that by creating rods and reels and different things specific for kayak fishing. I would say that's the largest growing segment that we have that come into our store is the
Even
kayak fishing.
tournaments.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we have a bunch of kayak fishermen, and there's a couple of stores, but I know there's a big one in Oklahoma City that sells the kayaks, and they actually will let you take them out, like rent them for like a
Really?
day or whatever, and then you can
That's
take
awesome.
you can apply that towards the purchase of one once you find the one you want.
That's a
But
cool program.
yeah, so you're right. Kayak fishing has become really big.
Yeah, I think that for those who are trying to find a way to bridge that gap, look into a kayak.
There's a lot of, like the Durant Public Lake, and I know there's some other
Arcadia.
local lakes that do kayak rentals, like you were saying, but it's just, you can go and you can just rent it for a couple hours.
That's right.
Yep.
And so you don't even have to buy your own. You can just kind of Google it and see
Right.
where they're accessible, and they're super user friendly. We were doing some field work a month ago, and this girl went with us, and she was like, we're pulling the kayaks out. We're about to launch them. And she's like, I've never been on one. And I was like, can you swim? And she's like, yeah. I was like, we'll be okay. Just,
Right.
We'll be
Right.
safe. And she did fine. She did absolutely fine. No experience before, and they're so user friendly. I love
Right.
them.
Right. And like I said, they just give you so many advantages.
Yeah, that's a great point because, like I said, it really has in Oklahoma exploded.
For sure. Well, that is kind of going to bring us to the end of our talk today. Michael, like I said, you're a wealth of knowledge.
Thank
and
you.
I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come join us today.
Well, I appreciate you both having me and getting the opportunity to talk fishing. It's certainly my passion.
Yeah, for sure.
So fun.
To all the users out there, if you have any more questions, feel free, drop them in the comments. Go by the store, not only Michael's store, but there's plenty of them around the Oklahoma area that will
Absolutely.
give you advice and give you knowledge of guys that do it every day. Our website, we have fishing tips for every species that we have here in the state that is considered a game fish. So all the way from trout to paddlefish to striper, all of it. So this episode was sponsored, actually hosted, not sponsored, by the Wildlife Department. So be sure to check out our social media. Be sure to check out Lucky Lure Tackle and all of their classes that they have. Do you have any coming up soon?
We have some fly tying classes coming up
Okay.
for crappie jigs, things of that nature. That'll be in May.
Awesome. Yeah, be sure to check out their website for those, and we'll catch you next time. So.